Do you have something to say?
A list of the 100 scariest books ever written, as compiled by the website Horror Novel Review, link in the description box. Of the 100 books, I've read 34. Some I thought were excellent, provided legitimate scares. Others, not so much. So to sort it all out, I'm going to do a tier ranking. I took out 4 books that I hate. I don't want this video to be too negative. So 30 books, 3 tiers. Let's take a look at the tiers. At the very bottom, we have Nancy Reagan. Nancy Reagan was a former actress, First Lady of the United States, wife of President Ronald Reagan. But what I remember most about Nancy Reagan is the anti-drug campaign she spearheaded, where she tried to convince people to just say no. So when I come across a book that has me saying no, it's going straight into the Nancy Reagan tier.
Just say no.
Next, we have the Carly Rae Jepsen tier. Carly Rae Jepsen had a hit song a while back, Call Me Maybe. So when I come across a book that really didn't do much for me, especially in terms of scares, but I can see how another reader could find it interesting or scary even. I didn't hate it. It does have something to offer. So that's a Carly Rae Jepsen tier. And the top tier, of course, is jalapenos. I love me some jalapenos. They are tasty and juicy and they pack a punch. Love them. So when I come across a book that hits me in the face, like in a good way, that's tasty and juicy and packs a punch, it goes into the jalapeno tier. And I actually have a jar of jalapenos. So when I put a book in the jalapeno tier, I'm going to celebrate and eat me a juicy, tasty, punch-packing jalapeno. And not just any jalapeno. These are Latvian jalapenos from Rimi. Pretty exotic, right? This jar of jalapenos cost me €2, to give you an idea of the kind of expenses I incur making these videos. So support the channel, buy my books, descriptions and links in the comment section. Now, let's take a look at the tiers. Now, let's do this. Some good Latvian jalapenos. First book on the list is Lord of the Flies. Now, I read this book when I was a teenager, a long time ago. I remember loving it. I'm thinking it was excellent. It's obviously a classic that has inspired so many other stories, so many other books and movies. I don't remember it being scary, and I don't think it is scary if it's required reading for a lot of high school students. But I'm certainly not going to put this in the Nancy Reagan tier. I would imagine maybe if you think about what the ideas that this book is exploring and what it's implying about us as humanity, it could be frightening. So this is going in the Carly Rae Jepsen. Next up, we have Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. Love this book. 5 stars. It is violent and it is graphic and it is disturbing, but it is so gorgeous, so gorgeously written and so daring too. I do not consider this a scary book. It's not really even a horror book, actually. But there is one scene towards the end where a young boy is being tortured. And because the writing is so exquisite, it is impactful. So I wasn't necessarily scared, but I squirmed quite a bit in my seat while I was reading this. So I'm going to put this in the jalapeno I'm going to put this in the jalapeno tier, which means I get to have my first jalapeno. This is my first jalapeno of the day. I've been waiting for this. Okay, moving on. Next up, we have Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is a great book, I think. Great villain, especially the introduction, the way there's a build up to his introduction. His introduction is spectacular. Kind of loses its way in the middle, and the ending is a bit silly, I think. but a classic. I don't think it's particularly scary. But I'm definitely not going to put it in the Nancy Reagan tier. So this is another Carly Rae Jepsen book. Next, we have Ghost Story by Peter Straub. This is another book that is considered a classic. I have no idea why. I did not have a good experience with this book. Did not think much of it. It's very slow and kind of silly, and definitely not scary. So Peter Straub, a lot of people love this book. I have liked other books by him, but this one, no.
Just say no.
Next up, we have Haunted by Chuck Palahniuk. Now, I have enjoyed many Chuck Palahniuk books. I like his writing a lot. This book did not work on me at all. Essentially, we have a group of writers who go on a writer's retreat, and things get dark, very quickly. So the book is presented as a series of these vignettes that these writers are writing, and they all come together to form this narrative. This book is just not grounded at all. When you read a Chuck Palahniuk book, you know you're going to explore the edges of humanity, the margins, if you will. And I think here he just maybe pushes it a little too far. It was unbelievable, and I had a hard time. I couldn't connect with anything that was going on in this book because it just wasn't grounded enough for me. I know people will say that one of the short stories or one of the vignettes in this book, which is called Guts, they will say, "Oh, it's so disgusting and gross." But honestly, it did nothing for me because it's just not grounded enough. And I was never on board with what was going on here, which is surprising because I love Chuck Palahniuk, but not this book. So there is, I'm going to put this another Nancy Reagan tier.
Just say no.
Next up, we have House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This book is a masterpiece, and I get to eat another jalapeno. Fantastic. Still tasting that last one, but that's okay. Can never have too many. House of Leaves is just gorgeously presented, constructed. There is one scene towards the end that involves a matchbook and a guy reading, and it's one of the best scenes in all of literature, I think. And I think it is genuinely, legitimately scary. In fact, when I read that scene, my mind was blown, my jaw was hanging open, and I could feel myself starting to think about that scene, and I was getting a little weirded out. So I had to read the next scene right after that. It's like I had to get my mind on something else. Yeah, House of Leaves is excellent. Oh my goodness. We have Clive Barker's Books of Blood. Books of Blood is a series of 6 short story collections, but now you can find them published together in the same book, same volume. This is some of the most important horror writing that's ever been published. This is just a masterpiece, and it does provide legitimate scares. Jalapeno. Oh, let me pick out a big one here. All right. There are 2 stories in particular from this collection, Books of Blood. One is the Madonna, where this real estate developer, he checks out these abandoned bathhouse to develop it into something else. And what he encounters is this seductive entity. That one was pretty scary to me. The scariest book, in my opinion, in all the collection is Pig Blood Blues. This is set in a reformatory for delinquent boys. And there's one boy in particular, he's being picked on by the other kids, and all the other kids, they threaten to feed him to this sow, a female pig that lives on the premises. And there's a retired police officer who takes an interest in this young boy and might want to help him with his situation. Yeah, this was a story that stuck in my head for quite a long time. Moving on, we have another one by Clive Barker. This is The Great and Secret Show. I love Clive Barker, and I love this one too. Great opening. This is kind of action, fantasy, horror hybrid. There's a lot to like in this book. I don't know if there's anything scary in this book. Maybe one scene where these teenagers go swimming. I didn't like that scene, actually. But I didn't find it scary. But, you know, somebody might. It is a good book. Carly Rae Jepsen. Next up, we have The Totem by David Morrell. I like this book a lot. This is another action horror hybrid. I don't know if I would call this scary. I don't think really it's really trying to be scary. There is one scene where a young boy gets infected by this infected beast. Except the young boy doesn't tell anybody about it because he thinks he'll get in trouble. So he just lets the infection fester. Not really a scary book though. So we'll put it in the Carly Rae Jepsen tier. Next up, I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. A great book. This is the last man on earth kind of trope going for it. It's one of the better ones in the genre. Is it scary though? I mean, if you stop and think about the isolation and the implications, and then there's that punch at the end, if you want to think about those implications, I suppose it could scare somebody. I thought it was great. It was thought-provoking. I didn't think it was scary, but I understand if someone else does. So another Carly Rae Jepsen book. Next up, we have The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Another great book. I love Shirley Jackson. I love this as a character study. I found the protagonist fascinating. The unwarranted optimism with which she conducts her life, just fascinating. I didn't find it scary though, but it is Shirley Jackson, and Shirley Jackson's writing is just like hypnotic. I probably should put it in the Carly Rae Jepsen tier because I didn't find it scary, but I could imagine someone who's afraid of haunted houses might find it scary. But Shirley Jackson and My Mouth is Dry, I want another jalapeno. So Haunting of Hill House goes in the jalapeno section. Tier, excuse me. All right. Oh, this one's kind of broken. That's all right. Okay, we have more Clive Barker. More Clive Barker. Can't get enough. Can't have too much Clive Barker. This is Cold Hard Canyon. This is a very cool kind of ghost story almost. And you will not hear me say that very often, that a ghost story is cool, but this one is. And nothing really scary about it, except maybe there's this mural that depicts a lot of tragedy, and these people who are painted in the mural are like stuck in this mural. And that's kind of a creepy concept. But it didn't provide any scares. I do like this book a lot though, and recommend it. It's fun and inventive, and it has some weird eroticism in it, which you often get from Clive Barker, which I like a lot. Next up, Psycho by Robert Bloch. Another great book, another classic. I love how filthy this book is. It's just dirty and grimy, and everything smells bad, and everybody's sweating all the time. I love that about it. There is definitely a lot of tension, but is tension the same as scares? I don't think that Psycho is a scary book. I can't do it. Great book, but not especially scary. Carly Rae Jepsen. Next up, we have Off Season by Jack Ketchum. This was his debut novel, and this is brutal. Oh my goodness. I can't really say that this is a great book, but it's definitely scary. Yeah, this is a jalapeno, no doubt. All right. I'm thinking that these jalapenos are not as strong as the ones I ate for the last tier ranking. This Off Season by Jack Ketchum. It is graphic and it is realistic. There are no supernatural elements. They're just these inbred humanoid savages that invade this family or these group of friends that have rented out a cabin for the weekend. And they just go crazy on them. So there's a home invasion aspect to it. Oh, no, thank you. Next up, we have The Collector. This is a book that I did not enjoy. This book is really, it's essentially this loser who kidnaps this girl and keeps her in his basement. And the book is divided into two parts. The first part is his perspective, and then the second part is her perspective. It's just ugly. He doesn't like hurt her or abuse her, but he just takes her life away, right? Just because he wants to. Disgusting, is that the same as scared? I don't know. It's close enough for me to eat a jalapeno. I didn't love this book, but I can say that it is upsetting. What is not upsetting is another jalapeno. Maybe I'm building up a tolerance because I'm thinking that these are not as strong as the last time. Next up, we have Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. This is probably my favorite horror novel of all time. It's just gorgeous, gorgeous. I don't really feel that it's a horror story. It's set in the horror universe, but it's a story about a father and a son and how time is separating them, and they're growing apart because of time, because of the passage of time. It's a touching story. It's beautiful. It had me crying at the end, but there's nothing scary about it. Nothing scary about it. So I can't eat a jalapeno, but I can give it a very high recommendation. But for scares, The Turn of the Screw is a ghost story, so it could never be a jalapeno because I am not a child. But as far as ghost stories go, this one does a good job in creating the ambience of this creepy home. And there is a little bit of mystery about, how she got this job looking after these kids. It's all right. Next up, Horns by Joe Hill. I did not have a good experience with this book. And this was my only Joe Hill experience. It was the first book I read from him. And it turned me off. And he has such a good reputation. He's probably put out so many books that I would love. I just have yet to give him a second chance. But yeah, Horns did not work on me. I enjoyed the opening. Have this guy, he wakes up and he has these horns, almost like devil horns. And he just goes about his life, and people want to confess all the horrible thoughts that they have. They want to tell him about it. So that part was very cool. That premise is cool. Things do get really dark because there is a murder. He's being accused of killing his girlfriend, which we get the sense that he didn't do it. He's being wrongfully accused. So that's kind of where the story heads in that direction, and that is really ugly. And this is written almost in a style like for a younger reader. It's kind of got a YA feel to it, but the subject matter is not YA. How the tone of the writing contrasted from the tone of the story, that didn't sit well with me. And it leans very heavily on Christian mythology. Yeah, it didn't work on me at all. So I picked the wrong Joe Hill book to have my first Joe Hill experience, I think.
Just say no.
Next up, The Ritual by Adam Neville. Adam Neville is the best horror writer working today, in my opinion. He writes serious horror for serious horror fans, and The Ritual is one of his better ones. They're all good, but this is one of his best. and I'm going to eat a jalapeno. Mm-mm-mm-hmm. Next up, we have another Richard Matheson book. This one is Hell House. Hell House. This book is absurd. It's silly. It's goofy. It's over the top. It's almost Scooby-Doo-ish. But it's fun. Like, it's so over the top that it's fun. However, I went into this book after having read I Am Legend, so I was expecting something serious. So I came away a little bit disappointed, which is unfortunate because with the right frame of mind, this could be a really fun book. But it's definitely not scary. So I am going to put this... I'm going to put this in the Nancy Reagan category because there's nothing scary about it at all. But it's definitely not a bad book. So
Just say no.
next up, we have The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is not a horror book. Is it scary? I didn't think so. A lot of people love this book. I did not have a good time with this book. I just found it irritating how they would have these parties and they're all trying to be super witty all the time, and it just wore on me. None of their wit charmed me. It was not a pleasurable reading experience for me, and there's nothing scary about it. I don't think the attempt is to scare.
Just say no.
Next up, we have The Complete Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe, and Edgar Allan Poe is one of my all-time favorites. Jalapeno, definitely. Edgar Allan Poe is responsible in large part for making me an avid reader and a horror writer as well today. What I think are the scariest stories from him? I mean, some of his poetry gets stuck in my head and can creep me out for days on end. But I think it's The Mask of the Red Death. Pit and the Pendulum is quite scary too. Yeah, Poe works on me every time. Next up, we have The Elementals by Michael McDowell. This is another ghost story. It's set in the American South. This is a book that a lot of people loved. I didn't love it. I didn't like it. I didn't get it, honestly, because I've met people who had told me that you need to understand the South of the United States. You need to understand that mentality to get the subtext that's going on here. All of that went over my head. And then what's left is just ghosts. And ghosts don't do much for me. So, bottom tier.
Just say no.
Next up, we have Nightwear by John Everson. I was happy to see this book on the list because this is a lesser known book. It doesn't often get talked about. And I like this book quite a lot. This is a young married couple, and they get invited to this S&M club, like a secret S&M club, and they go, and there's some weird stuff going on, maybe some supernatural elements, but the wife, she's really into it, and she gets addicted, and she just goes further and further with this sex club. So the guy, he has to go in and get his wife back. There's a good mixture of like pleasure and pain and the eroticism and gore and stuff like that. It reminded me of some of the writing from the Books of Blood that Clive Barker did. But yeah, this worked on me. It was a fun, beautiful descriptions of gore and such, and weird sex. I love weird sex. Nothing scary about this book though, unless you're scared of S&M. If you're scared of S&M, what are you doing watching this channel, right? This is a Carly Rae Jepsen tier. Next up, we have The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin, one of my favorite horror books of all time, The Stepford Wives. And it is a layered book. It's short, like 120 pages. You can read it and just have a laugh because it's satire. You can read it to get inspired to change society because it works as a condemnation of the subjugation of women. Or you can read it as a sci-fi story and as a scary story, and it definitely, for me, has some legitimate scares. I love this book. It works on so many levels. Definitely a jalapeno book. Okay. Next up, we have Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. Now, for a long time, I consider this to be the worst book I've ever read. Not the worst book, the book that I hate the most. So obviously, this is going to go in the Nancy Reagan category. But this is such a popular, successful book. I hate it so much. I think that it merits an explanation. So I'll give you that in a second. Let's put this in the bottom tier.
Just say no.
So I read this book not long after it first came out. So this was back in 91, 92. And at the time I was living in the United States. And I had been exposed to Christian fundamentalism. There's a lot of that in the United States. And it's easy to get, it's hard to miss. You get it. I got more than my fair share of it in a specific time in my life. And one aspect of this Christian fundamentalism that I was exposed to is the anti-science. Like science is bad, science is of the devil, science is trying to replace God, right? And it's just anti-science, but militantly so and aggressively so. And that upset me, bothered me, scared me. It's just stupid too, like willful, aggressive ignorance. And I really didn't like it, really didn't like that. And I read this book shortly after that experience, like maybe a few years, a year or two after that experience. And early on in the book, there's a scene where all the characters, they're flying to this island. And that's where we get the exposition dump about who each character is. And I hated that scene because I hated every character in that exposition dump. But I also got a sense, right or wrong, this is the sense I got, a very strong sense of anti-science that reminded me of this Christian fundamentalism that I had been exposed to. It just seemed like they had one science character or a mathematician, and he just using him just like as a punching bag almost. And I got this vibe from the book, from the tone of the book, that was anti-science. And I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know anything about Michael Crichton. I just know my experience reading the book and what I got out of it, which was surprising. I went into this with high expectations. It was given to me by a friend who knows my tastes, but I reacted very badly to it. I haven't seen any of the movies. Like, that's how much I hate this book. Like, I don't want anything to do with that world, that property. And that's my only Michael Crichton reading experience. As a kid, I remember I watched the movie Westworld and loved it, right? It's got cowboys and gunfights and robots. Of course I loved it. But Jurassic Park's my only experience with his books, and I can't imagine having another experience. Moving on. Next, we have Rosemary's Baby, again by Ira Levin. I think this is a great book. It's fun. I don't think it's scary. I don't think there's anything scary going on in the book. I think the tone of the book is quite camp. It's quite tongue-in-cheek, quite knowing. And it provides for a fun reading experience. I don't think it's scary, so I'm going to put it in the Carly Rae Jepsen tier. Now, Roman Polanski made a movie adaptation of it. I've seen that movie adaptation, and I thought the movie was scary. I thought Roman Polanski tried to make a scary movie, and I thought he was effective. I think he did a good job with that. I don't know if those were Ira Levin's intentions. Ira Levin is quite a camp writer, quite a tongue-in-cheek, silly, fun time, popcorn, science fiction, popcorn horror, if you will. And I think he nails it with this book, but it's not scary. Next up, we have World War Z by Max Brooks. I love this book, and I am going to eat a jalapeno. We have the zombie apocalypse. Well, after the zombie apocalypse, we have a delegate from the United Nations who goes around the world and collects testimonials, see how different people, different factions of society, how they manage to survive. And I love fantasizing about the zombie apocalypse, how I would survive, how I would fight back, all that. So this book played really well into my daydreams, my fantasies. And it gets so into the details in such a creative way. It just sticks in your head. And yeah, I don't know if I would call that scary, but if you stay in that world that it creates, he does a great job creating this world. You can lose yourself in that world and create scares for yourself. It's very good. Next up, we have American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. This book is graphic and it's violent. And the violence is unprepared. Like, it just kind of almost comes out of nowhere. So we don't have that buildup. And a lot of what's scary is the buildup, right? Having you imagine the possibilities and the horrific possibilities there are to come, and then finally giving you the release of it actually happening. But with American Psycho, we don't have that. We just have kind of splashes of gratuitous violence. I don't think this is a scary book. I did like the book. Not as much as a lot of people do. I liked it okay. Not scary, though. There is enough blood and violence for it to not be in the Nancy Reagan category. So, Carly Rae Jepsen. And we will end with At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. And this is probably my favorite of his. And I like him quite a lot. So I'm going to eat a jalapeno. I'm going to make it a good one. That looks like a nice juicy jalapeno. What's so effective about this book, this novella, or short story, really, it's like 70 pages, 70, 80 pages maybe. It's kind of like the found footage thing. It's presented as an article or a travel log from these researchers who fly to Antarctica to find out what happened to the team of researchers that went before them. So it's kind of written like a faux documentary kind of thing. So it's written as a faux documentary kind of thing, and I think it's very effective in creating that tone and making it believable. Like, I really felt like this was written by researchers who were going to investigate what happened to another team of researchers, which is a trope that you see a lot in horror and science fiction. And this is one of the better examples of that, and one of the earlier as well. As far as it being scary, it does a great job, I think, of introducing a possibility to us, which is reasonable and believable, especially in the way it's presented, but which also has terrifying implications. So I think this is one of his better books, in my opinion, and it's one of his scariest. So, do you have any experience with the books I talked about in this video? I would love to hear your thoughts, your opinions about them, and I would love to connect with you in the comment section. Thank you for watching. I'll see you at the next video.